Hello, everybody. It's Friday again. Bonjour, bonjour.
Bonjour à tous. Hi, everyone.
All right, we have today Frank. Uh, how would I pronounce it? Bonkowski. Is this correct?
That's
And
it.
we have Nicholas Walker. So from these are English teachers. I don't remember if we had English teachers before, but specialists in teaching English, which is a very important topic at LangFest. So welcome to you too. Thank you for taking the time to come on our show.
Thank you, Tetsu. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Okay. So
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited to participate in your conference, and we're really thrilled to be able to talk about our topic, which I think is so important to our field.
that's fantastic. So, to remind everybody, this is our second of our series to introduce our speakers at LangFest 2019. So we have begun to, I guess, let the cat out. Last, starting to introduce our speakers. We haven't had a chance to uh, compile everything and put them on our website, but we are slowly rolling out everything as on a rolling basis as we go. We are translating a lot of the text that we get, the biographies and the descriptions. So that's coming up. Remind everybody that we do have a Langfest app, so we will fill that up, I guess, to
Yeah.
populate it with all the information, and it'll be ready for everybody in a few weeks. I think within 2 or 3 weeks, I think we should be able to roll it out, at least our first draft. And I also want to do one announcement before we get into the interview. Once again, to remind everybody that this year, for the first time, we will be holding Langfest at Université de Montréal. It's a new venue for us. We have been very fortunate to have Concordia University host us for the past 3 years, and it's been fantastic. We want to thank Concordia again. But this year we thought, little change of scenery for the folks coming to visit us year after year, and also for us to have a new experience. So we have. I actually went to Université de Montréal yesterday to look at the venue, and it's going to be fantastic. So, without further ado, let's get into today's interview. Do you have anything to say, Nicolas, before?
No, I think you've covered pretty much everything. I'm just trying to think. Is this the first time that we have another Nicholas apart from me giving a talk at Langfest? I think so. So
That's good. I mean, 50% of the screen right now is Nicholas, so
yeah, exactly. So a strong Nicholas presence here.
that's right. That's right. So,
My son is named Nicholas.
oh wow,
Oh well,
it's
do
just
you
too
see?
much now. It's a good thing that he's not on
Yeah,
screen right now.
We have you surrounded.
yeah, exactly.
Surrender.
You have us cornered. Oh,
Great Nicholas.
this. Where are you? So, so Nicholas, why don't we start with you? With your involvement in the language world. What do you do? What occupies your time?
All right. So what do I do? Like Frank, I am an English second language teacher at a French cégep, French language cégep. The name of my cégep, and a cégep, for those people who don't know, is a junior college in the Quebec education system. And I teach at Ahuntsic College, which is in the north part of Montreal. And I teach English as a second language, largely to, I mean, I would say that most of the students are francophones from Quebec, although we have a very large immigrant population. We have a lot of Haitians, a lot of Arabic speakers, and Hispanophones, people who speak Spanish. But of course, they are studying in French and are there for French language programs. But all the programs require students to take a minimum of two English second language courses. And so I teach those students. I prefer the lower levels. I like to teach beginners and low intermediates or perhaps high intermediates. But though that's my clientele, And that's what I do every day at work at a Hunsick College in Montreal.
Fantastic. And Frank?
Well, I mean, it's a very similar profile at Cégep de Saint Laurent, which is about what, half an hour away from Nick's Cégep, the junior college, and they're young adults. And he was talking to a girl yesterday. I said, well, "You must be 20." She said, "No, I'm 19 years old." She actually was a francophone, but had lived in the States. So it's a very mixed group of people. And I teach the upper levels, high intermediate to advanced levels, and so my materials are geared for that. And if I work backwards on my career, I've been now over a dozen years at the CEGEP, and it's every day is a new experience. And previously, I was at a distance education in the francophone called Téléuniversité,
Oh, wow. Okay.
which produces distance education courses. So I was doing teacher training there. Then I was at McGill doing teacher training at Concordia as well. And then previously, I was in high school. So I go back really a long way.
I
And
guess so.
yeah, really a long way, and always been passionate about actually writing materials and using the classroom as a laboratory,
All right.
experimenting with stuff. And we'll get into our experience in producing materials.
Yeah, okay. But first things first, how did you guys meet? I mean, what is the nature of your association?
Well,
I'm going to let Frank take this one because
Oh,
I'll just start by saying that I remember an email coming to my inbox at the college saying that there's this exciting new material available for upper levels, 102s and 103s, higher intermediates and advanced. And I don't really teach those levels. And so I let it go by. And then this name kept coming back. Who is this mysterious material? And I'll let Frank take the rest of the story.
that goes back. What goes back at least 2 years now? Because I remember launching my online course, and actually it came out in September of 2017. And so I approached Nick, and I saw his name. We both belong to the CGEP Facebook group, private group.
okay.
Doing stuff there. So Nicholas, as he said, he wasn't teaching those levels. But then I saw what Nick was doing, and I started. And we started collaborating and talking, and I started using his books at the lower levels, which is a combination of online and print-based books. And then so he sort of switched the tables on me.
Wow. Talk about mutual respect.
Exactly, and we both become, I think, mutual fans of each other. I'm
There you
constantly
go.
promoting and supporting him and using his materials and referring to him in any blogs I write, any blog posts. And he does the same with me. Of course, Nick is also famous for his virtual writing tutor that I've used and gotten great reviews in.
Okay.
And I'll explain that later. I'm sure Nick will want to talk about that. So it was a bit of a how could I say accidental start, but it's now developing into something really fun and eventually, hopefully, really profitable.
Wow.
So what exactly sets the material that you developed apart from what you had previously, or which gap is it filling compared to what you were doing?
Well, Nick, do you want to handle that first, or?
It's such a big question, and there's so much to say. On the one hand, we can talk about why we got into self-publishing, and that's really our topic, is self-publishing.
Yeah.
And the reason I think we got into it is simply a frustration, a dissatisfaction with the materials that were available. And so many teachers feel this, and they feel they must adapt the lessons that are in the book or complete the lessons, because quite frankly, there's material, but there aren't necessarily coherent lessons for you to use. And so once you start the process of supplementing and adding to a textbook, then you start thinking, well, I'm using less and less of the textbook, and the students start to get frustrated and ask, why are we buying this textbook when we're using so little and you're giving so many handouts? And eventually the critical mass gets to the point where you say, okay, I need to either put together a course pack or get an ISBN number and produce a textbook of our own. So it was frustration that brought me into self-publishing. But maybe Frank has a different experience.
Oh, very much different. Nick and I, we do a little bit different things. I mean, he does partly online stuff and partly print-based stuff. I'm now completely online with my materials. But if I step back into the past, I mean, I was always keen on writing, and then I got involved in a project with some great colleagues back in the '80s. With a publishing company, now it's Pearson Education, and we produced a 5-level series that made tons of money. It was so fantastically successful. We never thought it would be so successful. It's a bit like Edmond Rostand, the author of Cyrano de Bergerac, which I'm now studying with my students, who thought his play Cyrano de Bergerac would be a tremendous failure. He apologized to the actors for saying, "Oh," and we thought our textbook series wouldn't quite be a failure, wouldn't be successful. Anyway, it ran for 20 years, giving us royalties. So that was my first experience with traditional publishing. And then I moved into teacher training and started writing materials as a teacher trainer for Tele University. We actually had to produce books for teachers. And so when I got into CEGEP level, I said, hey, here's an opportunity for me, based on my classroom experience and using the classroom as a laboratory, to actually start writing online materials, as opposed to Nick, who's well, we both do, I think, hybrid teaching. It's called hybrid teaching, Nick, where we're in the classroom, but we're also doing online stuff. I'm totally online for my materials, and Nick is a composite of online and materials.
All right. I'm going to pause you just 1 second to acknowledge the folks that are online with us right now. In fact, we have Chanel, who's always with us every week. We're very happy to have you online again today. And we also have William Bastien, probably William Bastien, who says, I had Mr. Bonkowski as an English teacher at CEGEP Saint Laurent back in 2010. Great man, apparently. So you want to shout out to your past student?
I thank William. I actually forget, but I've come a long way since 2010 and really upgraded my game.
I guess so. And I would like to remind you, we are live right now on Facebook and also on YouTube at the same time. And on YouTube we have Carol Todd, who's been participating at LangFest for the past few years. So good shout out to Carol also. Hello everybody. If you have any questions, do post them up in the comments, and we'll try to catch them as we go. So back to what you guys do. So a lot of online, less of the traditional now, right? And I heard virtual tutor, and I don't know what else do you guys have that are virtual tutor.
Perhaps
is
I
Nicholas,
should
right?
take this moment now and just explain a little bit about what I do. Like Frank talked about this hybrid approach, sometimes called blended learning. And what I do is I produce textbooks. I have them here behind me. They're spiral bound textbooks with activities and grammar and readings and that sort of thing. And card games. I'm a big proponent of interactive activities in the classroom, something that the big publishers don't tend to use. And in addition to that, I have an online Moodle course. Now, for those who don't know what Moodle is, Moodle is a learning management platform. It's open source and available to anybody. And so I installed Moodle on a server and started building activities to go with the textbook. So what we have at CEGEP are students who spend 2 hours in the classroom and 1 hour in a computer lab every week for 15 weeks. And so when they get to the lab, you have to have a lesson ready for them. And one thing I like to have them do is to do some automated quizzes. They get immediate feedback, and it reduces the amount of mechanical, tedious grading that I have to do. Well, years ago, I was interested, in maximizing the number of repeated exchanges of messages that students provide or engage in the classroom, but also I wanted them to do the same thing in writing. And so I got them involved in collaborative writing projects in the classroom, and it produced enormous amounts of text for me to correct. And I was noticing that a lot of the errors are repeated. You see the same kinds of, like capitalization errors if forgetting to capitalize the pronoun I, or names, for example, but also things like common transfer errors where students would say, I have 18 years instead of I am 18 years old. Forgetting to conjugate their verbs, using the wrong preposition, saying it depends of you instead of it depends on you. Many of these common errors. And at the time, I estimated there must be like 200 errors. So that they make repeatedly.
Common, yeah.
So I started programming Moodle using a filter, a glossary filter, to look through their text and try to find like 200 different common errors, these patterns that students would make. And then when it did, the Moodle would provide a little hyperlink, and that hyperlink would link to a glossary and provide them, the information they needed to correct the error. It slowed the server down to a snail's pace. Wow. It wasn't able to handle the amount of computation. Now, servers have become faster since then, but there's a problem. So I began exploring different kinds of technology, and there's an open source grammar checker called Language Tool, which I downloaded and with the help of a programmer installed on my server. And since then, I've spent the past 7 years encoding the errors that my students make in their writing in XML, uploading it to the server, and then the server catches those errors and it's much faster, more efficient, and gives them corrective feedback on it. Because it's directly related to learners' errors rather than first language errors, these are second language errors, it's actually become quite a large number of error correction rules that I have in the database, and has become quite successful at catching common errors that my students make. Instead of there being 200 patterns, I think I'm now up over 11,000 error detection rules. And so my textbooks, since 2012, this little self-publishing effort that I've engaged in, has really not been a way to enrich myself, but rather to fund these explorations of very expensive forms of new pedagogy, and that is to use computer-assisted learning and to pay for the server and to get a programmer to help me with other features of the website. And so right now I have a developer in India working full-time around, all through the year. And it's all possible because teachers and their students are ordering my textbooks.
And Virtual Writing Tutor is for free.
Yes, of course.
Wow.
So it's a great tool. It's not necessarily connected to Nick's Next.
So
I use it as well with my students. I say, go to the Virtual Writing Tutor and do your mechanical corrections there.
So what I'm hearing is that so basically the rules that you put into the system are specifically for one pair of languages, right? From English to French, because you want to target those errors. But I imagine you could potentially use the same system and input new rules to do new pairs of languages, and which might or not include English or French. Is that something that you think could be done? Like, could that be replicated for the teaching of other languages?
Okay, so this language tool, grammar checker open source system, is available. I think they've got, I can't remember, 14 active languages that they're working on developing rules for. My particular interest is English as a second language, so that's the only corpus of rules that I've been developing. My interest in particular are the errors that my students make, and so they're French language speakers, and so they bring their French grammar into English. We call these kinds of errors language transfer errors. Yeah. It's a transfer of French grammar rules into English. Sometimes they're vocabulary transfer errors, and we call those false cognates or false amis.
False friends.
False friends. And so those would be word choice errors that come specifically from French. But there's a whole other category of errors that we encounter as teachers and in applied linguistics, and these are developmental errors. And these are errors of, just noticing the meaningful parts of sentences in the second language and forgetting the little grammatical parts. And so in that case, somebody might say, I going shopping, right? Something like that. And they're not using the auxiliary. So it's a missing auxiliary. This is not an error that's specific to Francophone. Francophones. This is an error that's generalizable to all second language learners. And so, of course, I'm building specifically rules for my students, but whenever I encounter rules on the errors on the forum on Virtual Writing Tutor, I will code errors for those too and try to reach as many people as possible. And currently, I'm getting over 26,000 users per week, over 100,000 users per month. It's catching on in over 120 different countries around the world.
Wow.
It's really become quite a phenomenon.
So how would you describe your journey from English teacher to now a big part is entrepreneurship. It's learning new skills. I mean, programming. I don't know if you do a lot of this programming by yourself, or you have this Indian person that you're hiring. So this is a whole different set of skills that you had to pick up along the way. Both Frank and Nicholas. How would you describe that experience?
I'll let Frank talk about his experience with digital literacy first, and then I'll weigh in afterwards.
Well, on my side, I use Moodle as well at the CEGEP. William is there. I don't think back in 2010 we were using Moodle at the CEGEP. I don't think so. It's maybe 7-8 years that I've been using Moodle, which is a learning platform where you can actually input materials. You can create quizzes, assignments. You can have students write in Moodle. So that was a bit of a backdrop for me to get into using another tool, another learning platform, which is called Teachable. It's one of many learning platforms, and eventually I may move to what's called Kajabi, which is even another learning platform. I can talk about that later for a future project. But you ask about the technical skills and actually doing audiovisual materials. I mean, I had to become a little bit competent, much more competent in actually recording materials. And what do you use to record? Tetsu, you probably are aware of this. You need to have audiovisual skills. So I had to learn things like ScreenFlow, which is a video application that allows you to actually produce quality video. And then I also use, on a more simple level, what's called Screencast-O-Matic, which is a free application. And I have my students use it, and they have a little bit of a learning curve, but they love it. So that's an example of one skill you need to learn, is how to produce effective video, and learning the tools to do that, to edit and to upgrade your video so it looks interesting.
So if I can weigh in here too about the kinds of skills, Frank has mentioned, these platforms and these websites that are so important for self-publishers. But I think once you get into teaching, you soon realize that, there are so many skills you need to learn. Just writing on a chalkboard takes some practice. You need to learn how to use the word processor. You self-publish, you need to learn InDesign perhaps, which is
Wow.
You get a website, you start learning some HTML, maybe some XML, maybe some JavaScript. As Frank says, you need to learn audiovisual. So I think teachers soon recognize when they begin teaching that there are a lot of things that they need to learn. And what Frank and I have been doing is just what all teachers do, and that is developing our digital literacy and seeing where it takes us. And it's taking us into exciting new areas, I have to say.
Absolutely. I think in today's world, if you don't have this digital literacy, you're actually moving backwards. So
I just want to say two things. I mean, William's
Sure.
there. I know back in 2010, the students weren't that quite computer literate. Of course, they were on social media, maybe less, but the students have made leaps and bounds in using computer-assisted learning. I mean, they're really quick on it. The other thing is that working with someone like Nick and working with other colleagues, you get to learn. You're in a sense, you're introduced to new ideas, technical ideas, and you're actually forced to learn these things. There is a learning curve. You have to like it. If you're a and some teachers don't want to use Moodle, they don't want to use online stuff, and I can respect that. But today, really, it's part of the game. got to develop those skills. Students are ready to jump in and use online learning in the classroom. So, and then we've made leaps and bounds. Nicola, of course, is a technical whiz on that, and I'm learning all the time. And and that Nick actually introduced me to using Blogger in the classroom. I didn't.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Tool I use,
Oh,
and
wow.
have students create their own blogs,
Okay.
and turned into a wonderful experience using blogger.com.
Wow, Blogger also brings back a lot of memories for myself back in 2005, 2006 when I really started. That's really how I learned a little bit of what I know in the world of HTML and all that. Going and picking up little scripts left and right and plugging it into the whole thing. But anyways, time is winding down, so we're gonna have to start thinking about wrapping it up. But everything we've discussed, I mean, at least most of what we just talked about, this entrepreneurship part about publishing or self-publishing, will be part of your presentation, I suppose, at LangFest this year. So we definitely look forward to that. And in the near term, long term, or midterm future, what is in the works for you guys?
Well, if I can start, I'll just say that Frank and I have a presentation to put together.
Okay, yeah,
some work to do.
Go on.
And we want to do a really good presentation for people. We want to make sure that we don't waste too much time, and really hit those highlights, those important points to get people on board with the idea of self-publishing. And for me, it's important to express to teachers who are considering this that how important self-publishing has been for me in terms of professional development. It's made me a better teacher. I think Frank can attest to that. So we've got a presentation to develop. We're going to do our very best to do a good one. In addition to that, we've got textbooks that we are adapting and developing, and we've got new ideas all the time. I'm continuing to work on the virtual writing tutor right now. I've got a new theme coming out. I'm converting everything from PHP to Node, and Node JavaScript, if you know about that. It's a big job. And in the long term, quite honestly, we don't know. We don't know where we're going to be 5 years from now. We hope that we can continue to learn from this process and share what we know and our experience with others.
Great. Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm excited about working with Nick, because what I want to do is move my learner-based course, which is presently on Teachable, to move it to Nicola's site on Moodle, which has greater application, and it'll be an easier way to get to our target audience, which are English language teachers here in the system in Quebec. So that, and as well, is also to produce a kind of a paper-based version of the course, as Nick does with his own materials, to provide both the online component and a print-based component in the form of a textbook. So I'm excited about that project coming up later in the year.
That's fantastic. Well, we definitely look forward to your presentation. We do have a lot of presentations geared towards language learners or the students, but I think a little less for the language teachers, which is a big part of your audience. So I think that'll be something that's very original for
I might add, I'm very strong on participation and on collaboration. I'm collaborating with Nick for learners, but I'm also collaborating with a U.S. Based site for teacher training. So I have produced university credit-based materials for teachers pretty much in the States to teach writing to either young or young adult learners. So that's an exciting, and again, it just shows you the value of collaboration and working with people and learning and just doing great stuff.
LangFest will be a fertile ground for collaboration. I'm sure you'll meet a lot of people with like-minded people and allies, and simply friends. So looking forward to that. Thank you again to you two for today's interesting discussion. I want to remind our viewers to tune in every week at noon on Friday. Except next week we're going to have a little cancellation. Sorry about that, but we'll be back in the first week of May. So again, LangFest will be August 23rd to 25th in Université de Montréal, or at the Université of Montréal. See you in 2 weeks. All right. Thank you, everybody.
See ya.
Thank you, Tetsu. Thank you,
Okay.
Nicola.
Have a great
Bye
day.
bye.
You too.